Okay, here we go. Welcome back. This is episode 2 of Mud City, and I'm going to start off by following up on a little tangent that yesterday took me on with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and Star Forts. Um, my faith in humanity was restored by finding a more complete list of star forts in the U.S., and Fort McHenry is on it. Wikipedia's slipping. um, so I did make a list, and I wanted to compare it because I was just struck by the coincidence here of how many cities seem to have offices of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and star forts, and so I linked it up. I went through it all. That's at least it's listed here, and I did find Star Fort's actually not listed here. The one in New Mexico is definitely worth looking at, and if there's time, maybe I'll bring that up. Um, so I found 10. Without getting too deep or spending way too much time on it, I found 10 cities that share offices of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and star forts. And, I don't know how coincidental that is, and it makes me curious when I look at the map, and that's mostly all in the eastern area and down into Florida. Most of these, have corresponding star forts and offices in them. I did find the star fort that's out near here, but it wasn't listed on that list, and so I don't have quick access to it. And, it makes me curious about some of, Walla Walla. What's happening in Walla Walla that we need the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in Walla Walla? I don't know. It's just interesting the way, my mind tries to make these connections, So while I watched the video again, I realized when I scroll past, because I did say, I know I said I have retinitis pigmentosa, and so I miss things a lot, especially things that are off to the periphery. And so if I'm focusing on text, I miss some pictures. And, so when I watch the video back, the images really, these logos, I don't know, they really caught my eye, and I wanted to find out more about them. I mean, you just, look at that. Gee, do we really need to go over what all that is? I think if you got to a mud flood video, you're probably pretty well versed in what most of this means here. But so I was interested in this logo and what it could possibly mean. Why a castle? Why red and white? I was interested, and so sure enough, Wikipedia here is kind enough to have a little insignia thing, right? And it says the Corps of Engineers branch insignia. The Corps' castle is believed to have originated on an informal basis. In 1841, cadets at West Point wore insignia of this type. In 1902, the castle was formally adopted by the Corps of Engineers as branch insignia. The castle, in quotes, the castle is actually the Pershing Barracks at the United States Military Academy in West Point, New York. All right, so you can do a little follow-up, and here's what they say about Corps' Castle. Corps' Castle is the logo of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The logo is typically a white castle with 3 towers set on a red background. When the Corps' Castle is worn as insignia on uniform, it is similar to the logo design, but with a dull or shiny brass finish. The look of the Corps Castle traces its history back to the American Revolution, and which is interesting. Hopefully I remember to get back to that. Has evolved over time. So it says the medieval castle as a logo was started in 1840 on an informal basis. Beginning in 1841, cadets at the United States Military Academy at West Point, New York. So again, I don't want to just reread the same type of stuff. So, but I just want to say that. So the logo, the three towered logo, 1840, right? It says that the castle is actually the Pershing barracks at the United States Military Academy in West Point. Okay, now, I hope you're sitting down. This is the Pershing barracks. Look at this. I mean, I really should need to point anything out about this, you know? And so when we look up, I mean, some of the pictures are great too, and I have an idea about actually why it kind of looks the way it looks. Really, the only good picture of the clock tower in this series that they offer up here, and I'm sure there's a third slot that was there that is covering this clock. Yeah, you can't even really see it all here. But so I go and you look up. This is the United States Military Academy grounds and facilities, West Point, right? And so structures from the 19th century still in use, right? And I mean, it's crazy the way they talk about it. But I wanted to get to this here. So the dean's quarters were constructed in 1856 between the commandant's quarters and professor's row. A complex of structures known as the Ordnance Compound was completed between 1837 and 1840. It consisted of 3 stone buildings with 2 towers encircled by a wall. The building that stands in the center of the compound, now the First Class Cadets Social Club, which they're saying, okay, so they're saying that was built in between 1837 and 1840. And I couldn't really, I have to find a way to bring up a good picture of that. I couldn't really. Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm not reading far enough ahead. The building that stands in the center of the compound, now the First Class Cadets Social Club, was added in 1880. The second academic building was demolished in 1891 and replaced on the same location by what was then known as the West Academic Building. The Richard Morris Hunt designed structure took 4 years to complete and served as the main academic hall until 1950, when it was converted into a barracks and renamed Pershing Barracks. All right, so we're going to go back and look at Pershing Barracks again. And according to the West Point Wikipedia, there was a building there that was demolished. Where is it? The second academic building was demolished in 1891, which they say was one of the complexes that was built in 1837, 1840. So it was there for about 50 years or so. And they say they demolished it and replaced it by the West Academic Building, which is now this Pershing building. All right, so looking at these pictures and applying the mud flood perspective to it, I mean, this is a recovered building. This was either found buried at this level or they dug some of this out and stopped at this level. And they found that in 1837, 1840, but perhaps earlier. And because it's, again, the connections, the dates, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers they say that the symbolism started in 1840, but this building allegedly wasn't built until 1890. So I'm thinking in those 4 years, quote unquote, that it took them to build this castle, what they say this took 4 years, is they just remodeled it. They refurbished it. They added all this. And I see this in Baltimore all the time, this weird kind of stone. I almost just want to call it like a sheath. And somewhere I have a picture of this material falling off a house and underneath is red brick. So I'm thinking they just they just did a nice little cover-up job on the old building and relaunched it And this was the center of academics at West Point for, I don't know how many years did they say? I didn't quite catch that. So really interesting to me, and then you see the connection. There's so many Army Corps of Engineer offices near star forts. Star forts tend to have structures that are like this somewhere near them. This one is actually located on the United States military premier educational academic grounds. It can't just be coincidence, can it? I mean, am I crazy? I'm sure I am now on somebody's list that I don't want to be on. But I cannot believe that this is how quickly a tangent devolves, when you start looking at something, And all of this started over the banner. Can I go to the top of just the look of the banner caught my eye when rewatching episode 1, because I want to try to learn from my mistakes, and I will be getting editing software, I promise, or figuring out how to use whatever is installed on my computer. So it started with the flag and, castle, so I found out about the castle symbolism and where that took me to an actual freaking mud flood castle on West Point. So I wanted to look up the colors, and we saw the shield that they had there, so red and white checkerboard symbolism on the coat of arms, here, this insignia. And again, we all know the compass. Look, they do a little globe, here. But I just wanted to give a quick hit and see what would come up. And, of course, exposing the matrix and Masonic checkerboard came up, and, and the Croatian checkerboard. And so, I kind of looked in quickly into that, but, that's really not where I want to take this. Some of this reads, especially with the Masonic stuff and all this symbolism is, the way I'm viewing it and the way I've been looking at this situation for the last 25 years or so privately, it's all red herring, but, don't quote me on that. It's just something, I don't know, my instinct kind of tells me that, although a lot of it's interesting, and I'm sure I'll be touching on a whole lot of it because it's, it's out there for a reason. And so I wanted to do red and white color symbolism on flags, kind of see what would come up. Maybe my searches are too complicated, And so, this is what comes up, and it really didn't really interest me, But then I saw this one, the symbolism of colors, worship flags, right? So it was bringing in a religious context, which is also something I really, going to try to work away from, or not necessarily work away from, but not stress. Although I was raised a Christian, I don't know how I feel about religion today, and I'm sure as my series goes on, I'll be touching on all of that because, I'm rolling now. So it right away, the first thing they talk about on this on these worship, the symbolism, color symbolism, and I'm not going to read all this, but it's it's the blood of Jesus, redemption, salvation. Look at these highlighted words, and then white is the purity, right? So you have that like duality of the same, the heads and tails of the same thing, and then when you see it in combination. When they bring it down here, red and white, it's God's purifying work, the blood and the holiness. So that's like crusade type stuff to me, it sounds like, So does the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers believe they're doing God's purifying work? And are they, approaching God's purifying work through excavation, or have they started? Did it all begin with the excavation of these star forts and rebuilding of them? Because that's kind of what you know. And like I said, I hate to use Wikipedia, but I use it and those similar sources because they're like I said, it's quick, it's gateway information, it's stuff that clearly the powers that be don't mind being out there, or think is safe information, but sometimes like I said, the rabbit hole takes you into crazy places, and I never thought my first episode would be like a two-parter exposing a connection between the Star Fort and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and Mudflood. You just, you can't write that. I thought I was just going to post pictures of Fort Avenue and start to make some connections, and try to string together some connections I've been making off some of the photographs just locally in my neighborhood. And believe me when I say Baltimore has some amazing things to offer, and I hope I get to all of them. So anyway, I'm going to close episode 2 here. I had a great time making this one. It's amazing to me the way it's kind of coming together. So thanks for watching. Please, if you have any thoughts on anything that I discussed in here, please leave comments. I would love to read them. And so until the next one, cheers, guys.